Post-traumatic stress disorder is a severe anxiety disorder affecting many parents of children born preterm. Join us today as we discuss the signs and symptoms of PTSD and examine prevention measures to reduce the impact of PTSD on neonatal families. PTSD can develop after exposure to any event, which results in psychological trauma. While often associated with those in military combat situations, studies now indicate that parents who experience a neonatal intensive care unit or NICU stay report symptoms of PTSD during their child's hospitalization, and for some, for months or even many years afterwards. Joining us today is Paula Riggs. Paula is a licensed professional counselor and specializes in treating those experiencing PTSD.
PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a condition that we as humans experience when we've had a very traumatic experience, where a traumatic event or a series of events where we experience fear and horror in relation to that event. It begins to interfere with their daily function. It's no longer a healthy response to that traumatic event. I mean, obviously something traumatic has happened. Your response of fear, horror is natural, but when it continues for longer than a month, then it moves into a place where it's not very healthy for us. It interferes with our functioning personally, socially, work, health. The symptoms of PTSD are, again, a heightened arousal state. So you may have high anxiety, an exaggerated startle response to sights, sounds that's unnatural. You may also have difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating. You'll have what's called psychic numbing and avoidance. So you'll try to avoid those things that remind you of the traumatic event. For example, with children that are being cared for in a hospital in a neonatal unit, that child's life is very much perceived as being in danger. So anger and irritability are very much a symptom of PTSD. It might be important for someone to consider professional counseling and or medication when they have been experiencing distressing and intrusive symptoms for at least a month. Support system, peer support system, education support, all of those things are really important from the very onset, because the longer that the person waits, the more ingrained the trauma is going to be. So the unwanted startle responses, the hypervigilance, the flashbacks that they're having can really cause their whole body, mind to shut down and become more numb, which then just increases the function loss that they have with their family, with themselves, with their social interactions, with their work, and with their children. One thing that often comes up that I notice when treating patients that are experiencing PTSD is they speak a lot about guilt. For example, their child's anniversary, their first birthday, has come about, and instead of feeling joy at that child's first birthday, they are overwhelmed by feeling traumatized and feeling very sad. As I go through supporting that person, I help normalize and validate that that's completely to be expected. PTSD is not something that you experience and then it just goes away. For many folks, even years later, anniversaries of a birth, or if the child has passed, the anniversary of the child's birth and death, trigger a PTSD episode where, again, they're back in that experiencing, feeling the grief, feeling the loss, feeling the fear, feeling the trauma over again. Having someone to talk to and having that normalized and validated will help you take control over those moments. And that's a big piece of the treatment for PTSD, is this is something happening to you. You went through your pregnancy and it was a joyful time, and your birth was expected to be a joyful time, and your child was supposed to be a joyful experience. But instead, it turned into this horrific, trauma-filled burden, this experience of life and death and fear. And it's not realistic that that's just going to go away overnight. But one of the treatments is for you to take that experience that was completely out of your control and make it yours, own it.
Dr. Michael Hynan is Professor Emeritus of Clinical Psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He is a member of the board of the National Perinatal Association and the father of a child born preterm.
Having your baby in a NICU is a potentially traumatic experience that can produce significant emotional distress in parents. Even though my research focused on post-traumatic stress, I think that depression is even a greater problem, and many times depression and post-traumatic stress exist together. In one study, for example, the nurse researchers at North Carolina reported that 32% of NICU mothers adjust to a high-risk birth in a fashion that is very similar to how parents adjust to any full-term, healthy birth. And even though when childbirth goes wonderfully, 12 to 14% of mothers will have an episode of major depression during the first postpartum year. 20% or so of NICU parents feel so upset that they experience significant disruptions in their ability to work and to love. These parents may well need professional intervention to cope. All NICU parents should not be ashamed about admitting that they're having difficulty coping. I urge all NICU parents to seek out support, whether from NICU staff, parent support groups, social workers, or professional therapists. The good news is that, with appropriate emotional support, most NICU parents emerge from this terrible experience psychologically stronger. Research clearly shows that the most common human adjustments to trauma are resilience and post-traumatic growth. High-risk parents know how to do the heavy lifting. Endurance is their middle name, and they know that they have moved mountains.
Katrina Moline's son, Bryce, was born 16 weeks preterm. Bryce had an extensive NICU stay and has overcome many challenges associated with his early birth. Katrina joins us to talk about the impact of PTSD on her and her family.
I had always assumed that we would have a completely normal pregnancy and a full-term healthy baby. We had a midwife and we were going to do it naturally. So we were completely caught off guard. We had no idea that anything was wrong. We were low risk until it was too late. We ended up having my son Bryce at home. My husband and I had to give him CPR until emergency responders came. We spent 5 months living at the Ronald Donald house because he was so unstable that we didn't feel like we could leave to really even go home. We didn't go home for 2 weeks after his birth. It's certainly something that is hard to get out of your mind. You spend a lot of nights waking up, hearing alarms, or as a mom particularly, waking up with just this sixth sense that something's wrong. Bryce did eventually come home. After 150 days in the NICU, he came home with a feeding tube, he was on oxygen, he was on a pulse ox. It was something that we had hoped for and wished for and prayed for a long time, but we just weren't prepared, I guess, for the solitude. The longer you spend not being around people, the harder it is to have people around. I talked to a lot of other moms of preemies who have the same issue. You get so used to protecting your child from all of these elements that are without your control that you start to feel like you need to control all situations, things that you absolutely can't control, and it's hard to find a balance and to let go of some of that sometimes to kind of normalize a little bit. Hand to Hold has helped me with my PTSD in so many ways. It's really like a laundry list of ways that they've helped me. And I think that's what's so special about the organization is it's not a one-pronged approach. They kind of come at the problem from a lot of different directions. For instance, I have a mentor My mentor is, she's got a 25-weeker who's now 5, so he's several years ahead of Bryce in the just challenges that they're facing. He also has cerebral palsy, and so they're dealing with the same sorts of challenges that we are, but just, a little bit further along. And so I can kind of come to her and say, this is what we're going through, and she can help me with that. In addition to that, the support groups, they have some lunch and learns and some quarterly discussion series that I try to go to whenever I can. My husband and I go to the discussion series, and it's a night away for the two of us, which is also very helpful. Just knowing that I can call them up and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody who has a preemie, who's pregnant again and is high risk now, and they can connect me with somebody, and they did. And I'd say, there are just so many ways that Hand-to-Hold has helped me deal with the PTSD, but really the connection is what's the most valuable thing to me.
Hello, I am Kelley. I am the mother of 2 children born preterm, and I am the founder and executive director of Hand-to-Hold. The mission of Hand-to-Hold is to provide comprehensive navigation resources and support programs to parents of preemies, babies born with special healthcare needs, and those who experience a loss due to these or other complications. Peer-to-peer support has proven to be an effective tool in helping families cope with the emotional impact of a NICU stay. Parents receiving peer-to-peer support report less stress, anxiety, and depression, and indicate that their interactions with their peer help to reduce the feelings of isolation and provide an understanding and validation of their emotional experiences. If you are in need of peer-to-peer support or additional information about PTSD or other issues related to prematurity, please visit our website at www.handtohold.org. Thank you to St. David's Foundation for supporting this important project to ensure the best outcome for NICU babies and their families.